Hello, and thank you to the Booze Hunter for having me back. So the wine that we're looking at today is Domaine La Florane's Florescens red from the Southern Rhône, Côtes du Rhône Village, Visan, if we're being specific. So the Southern Rhône Valley is quite a large, expansive region. A lot of very varied sort of parts to it. The main varieties grown there are Grenache and Shiraz and Mataro or Mourvèdre, and a lot of other sort of lesser known varieties as well. A few whites too, such as Marsanne, Roussanne, Viognier. Grenache is absolutely king though, and I guess if you're sort of looking at Southern Rhone reds, typically they're going to be led by Grenache. Which is what this particular wine is, 90% Grenache and 10% Shiraz. Um, I kind of found too with the Southern Rhone Valley, the more I was reading up on it, the less I actually sort of feel like I knew. I kind of came away a bit dumber after reading there's 36 different villages. Many of those don't even get imported into Australia. So, you know, it's diverse, that's for sure. Some of the villages, such as Gigonda or Keran, are on sort of the bottom, the floor of the valley and produce extremely powerful, very dense sort of wines. Whereas Visan, by contrast, is it's up on the sides of the valley. It's very hilly, quite undulating, oppressively windy as well. The Mistral wind was just absolutely howling through non-stop when we were there. And there's a very high limestone content in the soil. Now, all of these lead to very fresh, naturally high acid wines, and almost sort of Southern Rhone for Pinot drinkers, I suppose, in style. So, Domaine La Florane, there are 16 producers in Visan. Domaine La Florane have quite an undulating estate, starts at about 195 metres above sea level and tops out at about 300 metres. The producer, it's headed up by a chap called Adrien Fabre. He's quite intense, very serious, but a lovely chap. The estate's certified organic, and he has an absolutely flat out no chemical regime whatsoever in his wines. The only additions are just a tiny little dot of sulphur at bottling. He's absolutely sort of hardcore on this. He described that they're basically natural wines, which for me is an interesting sort of look on natural wines. Basically, are they natural or not? I think natural is a bit more of a sort of stylistic kind of conversation than necessarily about additions. That's probably about another half an hour video, and I'm going to spare you that. So, so I suppose we're just talking in terms of just sort of good, clean, minimal intervention wines is the style. The wine making for this, he's got large concrete tanks. The wine's allowed to ferment naturally, and then just half of the juice he puts into 600 litre barrels old oak for 10 months. So there's a very minor oak influence in this wine. Now, a big part of his philosophy as well is that he's got various blocks on the estate, and the same blocks make the same wines up each year. Florescens comes from the middle set of blocks on the estate. And for instance, in a given year, if the wine was a little bit light on, he won't then put fruit from the top of the hill into the blend to sort of fluff it up. He just doesn't bottle it and sells it off in bulk. So I guess that sort of elusive quality of terroir, the sense of place, you really get that with these wines. These are very much about just reflecting the vines and the site that they come from, and certainly when you taste the lineup of his wines, you can really see the differences with, it's very little wine making, it's all about the site. So, to the booze, I suppose. It's a really interesting sort of style of Southern Rhone. There's, as I say, a freshness, a lovely sort of natural acidity to this as well. It's got a bit of sort of smokiness about it. There's, as with all of his wines, there's this lovely sort of violet kind of flower aromas as well, and flavours that you do get through this. I find for me, better just revisit him again. There's a sort of stewed plum. There's definitely an absolute abundance of sort of black fruits that come through on this one as well. It's, I suppose, Pinot with muscle would be probably a sort of reasonable qualitative comparison, I suppose, for this wine. And I suppose the last thing to say too comes from vintage 2014. A decent enough vintage for the Southern Rhone, reasonably textbook, no sort of major adverse weather conditions or anything. As with some vintages, such as 2010, the wines, or 2012 particularly, the wines were a lot more muscular, monstrous, powerful. 14 are just a little bit more sort of elegant, and I suppose, you know, if somebody was like, what does a Southern Rhone taste like? A 14 is probably as good as any to throw their way. That's about my 2 cents on Domaine La Florane's Florescens, so cheers and I hope you enjoy.